Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, the boys are back in town. The big boys,
The biggest boys.
are back in town, and we got our big boy drinks. And we got our big boy snacks.
Right.
And we're gonna have a big boy conversation, not combination. That doesn't make any sense.
You can tell this isn't our first drink.
The big boys are here. Richard, we got another big boy. Three big boys. There's Deb.
What up, Deb?
What's up, Deb? Good to see you, everyone. It's been a while since we've done a Facebook Live. Let me hit that wave button. Hey, sorry, I have a train that comes through my backyard, so if it gets really noisy, I'll just try to shout.
But don't worry, it's the gain train,
It's-
so it's supposed to be coming into the station all the time.
It's the gain train. So we're going to do a Corona stream. We bring the Coronas.
And the flex muscles.
And if you guys have any questions or topics for conversation, we'll take those. Otherwise, we're going to chat about how to combine kettlebell and bodyweight strength training. Of course, my neighbor decides to bring out the weed whacker right as we're streaming. Of course, why would it be any different? But we did a podcast this week where we talked about just bodyweight training. Alex helped us map out a minimalist approach to general physical preparedness with just training with your own body weight. It was super cool. It's on the Pat Flynn Show podcast. A week before, I think we just gave a minimalist program for something. I don't know. We're giving a bunch of crap all the time. A lot of crap out there. We're going to give some more crap today. We make crap. We serve crap. So we want to talk about training with mixed modalities, specifically kettlebells and body weights. And then we'll hang out, we'll drink some Coronas, and if you guys want to chat about anything specifically, we will be glad to do so. So before we dive into it, why don't we just talk about the respective individual benefits of both training with kettlebells and training with body weight, and then we can talk about how it may be best to synthesize the two into, and well, first off, like why consider these two modalities? I think and Alex will get you your opinion here. Just settle down. Is simplicity and convenience. Simplicity and convenience are, I think, one of the hallmark features of both kettlebells and bodyweight. It's a very minimalist setup. You don't need virtually anything aside from, well, a kettlebell and some floor space. And they complement each other very nicely. You can fill whatever gaps arise with kettlebell training, you can fill those pretty easily with bodyweight exercises. Whatever gaps might arise with bodyweight training, you can fill those pretty easily with some kettlebell exercises. So that's my introduction. If you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what you're drinking in the comments. Say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Like I said, the boys are back in town. The big boys are here. The big boy drinks and our big boy snacks. So let us know what you're drinking, what you're eating, and what questions you may have for us. Alex, start the conversation. Why train with kettlebells and bodyweight?
So Christopher Hattie is saying, settle down, Alex, and I will try my very best. But Christopher knows me pretty well, and he knows that I get really excited when I talk about
He's
kettlebell
always
body.
worked up. You hear him on the podcast. He's always worked
Very
up.
worked up. You should hear the stuff that I say before and after the podcast. That's when I really go nuts. So I would say the principal benefits of kettlebell and bodyweight training, well, let's focus on bodyweight training in particular, is very similar to what Pat just said, is that there is a plethora of ways to get strong and to do so simply and conveniently when we're talking about kettlebells and bodyweight. And, I think, and when we talk about bodyweight in particular, I mean, nothing can be more convenient than not needing any real equipment. Mini Seizure is so excited about this topic. And I would go one step further in saying that bodyweight training will teach you more about the discipline of getting strong than just about really any other modality. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to learn anything from kettlebells or from barbell training, but there is something to be said about getting strong by moving your body through free space, because there's nothing more functional. People love the idea of functional training. There's nothing more functional than being able to commandeer yourself against the unrelenting and ever-present pull of gravity. And the better that you can control your body through free space, and particularly when the leverage gets a little bit different so that things are getting more difficult, it has a very good carryover into kettlebell training and barbell training. And I can give you an example. Gymnasts who are best known for their just unreal strength and muscularity train almost exclusively with body weight. Not entirely, in many cases they do add some weight, but it's almost entirely body weight training. And there was a very famous strength coach named Charles Pollock who talked about training a couple of former gymnasts. And keep in mind, these are men who are probably 150 pounds maximum, and short guys too. And within 3 weeks of never having touched iron before, within 3 weeks, they both bench pressed over 350 pounds. All right, now, yeah, that is exactly the reaction you ought to have. One of those. So the question is how, right? Well, I mean, that's a much more high-level accomplishment, but it illustrates just how strong you could get by learning how to control your body in free space. So now you might be asking, okay, well, what does this have to do with me? I'm not a gymnast. I don't really want to be one. And the answer is that even at lower levels, bodyweight training has a huge carryover into your day-to-day strength and your ability to function as a walking, talking human being. And so in addition to the convenience element as well as the simplicity element, there is most importantly an element of effectiveness. So if you don't have a lot of time, but you do have a lot of ambition, getting good at bodyweight training is going to take you from here to eternity, as long as you know what you're doing.
Wow. Bravo, Alex. That was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Hello, Sarah. Hello, Christopher. Hello, names that I have to scroll up to see. Good to see you. Mike, two of my favorite guys. Mike Moran. Welcome to the stream with the big boys.
The biggest boys.
the biggest of the big boys. Coming at you live. There's my wife. She can't get enough of looking at the big boys. So, yeah, all right, so kettlebells. What do kettlebells offer? I'll try to supplement Alex's presentation there, which was so eloquent and beautifully stated, as always. You did a good job, Alex, of not letting yourself go on for too long. I'll try to do the same. And kettlebells, I think, like body weight, is a great way to learn how to move. Certain kettlebell exercises like the squat remind you of what your hips are supposed to do. They remind you of what your knees are supposed to do. It's a very intuitive instrument. I've actually often found that people learn the squat better or do squat better when they actually are holding a kettlebell than even if they're using their own body weight. The technique is better. It just tends to be more intuitive. So the kettlebell I also see as an instrument for learning or relearning. For most people it's relearning because we tend to move pretty well when we're kids. Proper movement patterns and function. Absolutely. The kettlebell to me is a Swiss Army knife of functional fitness. It can help you accomplish most things that you might want to be able to accomplish physically fairly well, if not in an even very robust sense. Is it better than the barbell for lower body strength? Probably not. Is it better than rings for upper body strength? Probably not. But could most people get most of the strength and most of the fitness results that they want most of the time from kettlebells, or mostly kettlebells? I think the answer is absolutely yes. The kettlebells are great because you get ballistics, you get grinds, you get upper body, you get lower body, you get pushing, you get pulling, you get hinging, you get squatting, you can do single bells, you can do double kettlebells. You can even curl a kettlebell. You might get some internet trolls after you if you curl too many kettlebells. That's fine. You have my permission to curl the kettlebell. What's up, Ray? How you doing?
Ray Paez.
I actually like kettlebell curls. I have nothing against kettlebell curls.
You have to do them in a squat rack if you really want to troll people.
Right.
Kettlebell curls in a squat rack.
So the kettlebell is just an extremely versatile and useful instrument. It doesn't take up a lot of space. Now, let's talk about killer apps, right? So when it comes to training mixed modalities, it's often helpful to think in terms of, well, what is this instrument best at? Because if I have a bunch of instruments or tools available, I might want to implement them in whatever way that they're going to be most useful. So, like a barbell, can you do a lot of mobility and flexibility work with a barbell? I guess you can do some. but it's probably better suited for deadlifts and squats, honestly. Like, that's the barbell's killer app. Well, same thing. What is the killer app of the kettlebell? I think is metabolic conditioning, honestly. I think the kettlebell is such a fantastic tool for complexes. It's compact. You can transition from various exercises very seamlessly. If you followed me for more than 5 minutes, you know that, like, this is my thing. I love kettlebell complexes. So I would say that's where the kettlebell, like, really shines. That's its killer app. But the kettlebell is also great for strength. Obviously, once you get into the double kettlebell lifts, front squats, double clean and press, you can build a pretty, impressive amount of strength with that. And it's useful for hypertrophy as well. Again, is it better than the barbell in all respects? No. I think it's silly when people say that the kettlebell will completely replace a barbell. All of this is context dependent and goal dependent. But can you gain strength with kettlebells? Yes, absolutely. Can you gain muscle with kettlebells? Absolutely. Now, where is the kettlebell hard to beat? I think it is for conditioning, complexes, but also movement and mobility as well. I think that's where kettlebells and body weight are kind of like neck and neck. So, Alex, what do you think of that, man? Were there any lies detected?
No lies detected.
Oh, no. There's some. He's found out.
Oh, hey guys.
We betrayed him.
I don't feel left out at all. Well, if Sam gets offended or upset, he is one of the few people who actually has the power to do literally anything he wants to do.
Right.
So, Sam, forgive us, please.
Yeah, at least his kicks don't reach all the way to Wisconsin. We've been trying to get Sam out to Wisconsin here for this.
It hasn't been for lack of trying that we left you out, Sam.
Right, yes. We tried. But for those who don't catch our weekly podcast, the three of us big boys, Sam, Alex, and myself, of course, jam every Wednesday on the podcast, talk about stuff like this. Killer abs, dump the corona. I think you can have both.
I think your abs are going to look better after.
Don't make me bust them out. I'll prove it.
I've seen them do it.
We can talk about that, what role alcohol plays and nutrition, and can you drink Corona and still have abs? That's a good question. We'll circle back to that. Alex, continue on that thread if you don't mind.
The flexibility.
Yeah, the preview, what I was saying before, all that.
So here's the thing. This doesn't really get talked about as much. I mean, you do hear periodically, people talking about it. But there is something important to be said for the role of movement if you want to get stronger. So let me give you an example. There's a well-known powerlifter who a friend of mine invited to his gym to teach a seminar on powerlifting. And the gentleman in question is a wealth of knowledge, one of the strongest men in the world, but he had a hard time rolling off of the bench after demonstrating the bench press. And that's due in no small part to the fact that he's really specialized to the power lifts, and that's what his body works at best. But walking up and down a flight of stairs he has some trouble with. Maybe that's not the case anymore, but it was at the time of him telling me the story. And even though that's incredible strength, and there's no question that that's a higher level of strength than what you're probably going to build with kettlebell and body weight, it is a level of specialization that is not particularly useful to most people. And not everybody needs to be able to squat 800 pounds, but everybody does need to be able to squat. And not everybody needs to be able to, lift 800 pounds off the ground, but everybody does need to be able to touch their toes. So the nice thing about kettlebell training and bodyweight training is that they both encourage and promote improved flexibility, mobility, and as I like to call it, all-around movability, like your ability to just be able to do whatever it is that you want to do without feeling encumbered. And so once you've moved out of your own way and you have a decent amount of mobility and flexibility, and particularly that which is built from full range of motion kettlebell and bodyweight movements, you don't have to spend as much time focusing on, let's say, your warm-up just to be able to get into basic positions. These are things that are actually going to be promoted by kettlebell and bodyweight training. And so the ideal is not to separate them, but to combine them so that you can get the best of both worlds. You can improve your all-around movability, and you can get strong at the same time.
Right, and anybody who has followed our programming knows that we do combine them quite regularly. Ray says the Agreement Podcast. This is the Agree Cast.
That's right.
And we will boldly affirm everything that comes out of each other's mouths. Just try us. Deb still loves Sam. That's good. Show Sam some love, guys. Give some likes for Sam.
We insist, because otherwise he's going to fly out here and wail on us.
Jamie says, can you explain complexes really quick? Yes, I can. A complex to me, this is just me, some people may disagree, is a series or collection of exercises performed back to back with little to no rest between, and typically done with one implement. So that's kind of how I might differentiate between a complex and a circuit. So in a circuit, you might have different implements kind of scattered about the gym, and you move from one station to another. You do something with a barbell here or a kettlebell there. Circuits are cool. I love them. I think they're super useful in many ways. But for me, a complex is when you string together those different exercises and use just one implement primarily. So like a kettlebell complex, a barbell complex, a bodyweight complex. And the benefits of training with complexes are, here's a big word, multifarious. Write it down. So there's a lot, right? So we can use, depending on how we program the complex, we can emphasize different outcomes, I guess we could put it. So some complexes can be very endurance focused, you know, higher reps, lighter weights, extended efforts, awesome for improving general endurance. We can do strength-based complexes, so we can really up the weight, cut the number of reps, cut the number of exercises, and focus on full body strength and power. A good example of that would be Dan John's armor building complex, which is 2 double cleans, 1 double military press, and 3 front squats. That is, I think, one of the best strength-based kettlebell complexes that you can do. And the cool thing about that is what would normally be the weakest movement in that chain, the double press, is of course of the fewest reps. So hopefully that isn't too much of a limiter there. And then you can also focus in between with some hypertrophy. You can kind of push the reps and or push the number of exercises, maybe between 5 to 12 reps each, and you can get both a great metabolic effect. There's no way that you're not going to have a conditioning effect from that, while also kind of deeply challenging, the muscles as well. So complexes themselves can be tweaked and programmed to help accomplish a lot of different things. So yeah, that's a complex, and that's where I think the kettlebell really shines. So some good questions coming in. We'll get to the questions, so keep them coming. But in the meantime, we want to keep talking about the primary theme of, sorry, I can't help but read the questions as they come in. The primary theme of how to combine kettlebells and body weight. So we've been making the case of why you should. Now let's talk about details. People love details. You guys always want stuff. You want.
So demanding.
You demand. And we give, and we give, and we give. And do we ever get, Alex?
On occasion.
We
On a rare occasion.
you guys are pretty good to us, actually. We do appreciate it. But you can give by liking, give us the likes and the hearts. That gives us that sense of fulfillment in life, so we'd really appreciate that. Okay, Alex, somebody wants a starting kettlebell and body weight program, introductory. What do we have them doing? People, bring out the pen and paper. This is where you want to start jotting it down, because Alex is about to spill all the secrets. Like and hearts for the secrets.
Well, what I would say is, first and foremost, Pat talked about killer apps earlier, and he means killer applications. Like, what are the things that are going to get you the most out of whatever that implement is? So with the kettlebell, there's no question that repetition quick lifts, so the ballistic lifts, like the cleans, or swings, cleans, snatches, things like that, are simply things you really can't replicate with anything else. Not with body weight training, not with a barbell, not with a dumbbell. So I would say first and foremost, that is one of the things that needs to be in any sort of a body weight and kettlebell program if you want to get the absolute most out of everything. So we'll start there. We'll start with, let's say, the swing. Just keep it very simple. Now, another thing that I think would be a very good thing to add would be something for the upper body for the kettlebell. And so a good example of this would be, and I'm a big fan of the Turkish get-up. And one of the reasons why is, well, number one, it helps you to recruit as much muscle as possible, and to do so as simply as possible. Now, there is a drawback in that there's kind of a learning curve, and it does take a little bit longer to learn, I think, than, like, let's say, a military press. But overhead movements are also, I would say, a secondary killer app for kettlebells, because while they can definitely be done with body weight, although it's a little bit more advanced for most people, it can be done with dumbbells, and certainly can be done with barbells. With the kettlebell, it's a little more attainable, and it also gives you the value of a little extra shoulder stability work. So you're going to be hitting a lot more muscle in a lot more ways than you might with a dumbbell or a barbell. Now, so let's start there. Let's start off with something overhead. Well, something like a quick lifty, let's say like swing, and then something overhead. So we could just do, like, again, a Turkish get-up. It's a very classic combination. Awesome. I did not come up with it, but
you did.
Yeah, I invented it. Why not? You know,
Yep.
this is all my idea.
And the exercises.
And I invented those too. Let it be known. Now, for bodyweight training, what I would say is I like to categorize it, generally speaking, in two very generic categories. One would be basically your relationship to the ground itself, how you move while you're on the ground. The other would be your relationship with gravity in hanging, meaning suspending yourself above ground to some degree. And I think if you connect the two of those, you're going to be good to go. So just to give you an example, I'm talking like absolute bare bones,
Basics,
basic
friends.
minimums.
You want the advanced stuff.
That you gotta pull out the wallet for. That's gonna be a little extra. But we will give you some ideas. So number one, swing, and let's say something like Turkish get up. Or, you could do the military press too, because it's a little bit less technical. I think it's a little easier for people to learn just right off the bat. And so either of those. And then in terms of getting the most out of the least with body weight training, you really can't do much better than crawling and hanging, because hanging is excellent for the shoulders, and many of us just have kind of crappy shoulders. Not, present company excluded. A lot of people have crappy shoulders
Not
as
me.
a result of me neither. Just
Not
to point
me.
it out, right? I am a perfect in every way.
Perfect
physically.
shoulders.
Absolutely. But hanging will do a lot to strengthen your grip. Will help to kind of do what's called distract the joints, kind of create some space in there. So a lot of the stuff that we like to do has a tendency to compress the joints, which is just, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just part and parcel of what comes with the exercises, but you want to do the reverse too. So hanging will do that. It will set you up for other movements such as pull-ups, which I think are, again, a killer app of bodyweight training if ever there was one.
Right, and that's going to fill a gap in kettlebells, because the gap in kettlebells is you don't get the vertical pulling. Unless, of course, you tie a kettlebell around your waist, which is, I guess you could call that a kettlebell exercise. But mostly, so you get the horizontal pulling with kettlebells, but the vertical pulling is a limitation. So pull-ups are definitely something you want to incorporate. Pull-ups, hanging.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so with the bodyweight training, again, a lot of it comes down to your relationship with gravity and how you move on the ground, as well as your relationship with gravity and how you suspend yourself above the ground. So bare bones minimum, I think would be crawling and hanging, and then you would build it up from there. We would say, let's say, crawling with the knees off the ground, for example, and pull-ups. And you can go another step further, and you can move from beyond crawling, and you can work on marching. Or walking lunges is another great example. It really helps to fire things up quite a bit. And the benefit too of some of these bodyweight things, like such as a crawling, walking, or the marching, walking lunges, is that there is a certain conditioning component that comes from moving from point A to point B that you don't get even with the best of conditioning movements with a kettlebell. So like snatches and the swings and that sort of a thing. Because they're meant to be done in place. So there's a certain level of efficiency you can kind of get from doing them. So doing those together, meaning conditioning where you're standing in place as well as conditioning where you're moving from point A to point B, fills yet another gap. And it's really going to have a nice carryover effect into a lot of the other things you do. And then finally, I would say, you could start working on things like sprinting. I would say hill sprinting in particular. As well as you could do like climbing or working on the monkey bars where you're going from place to place.
Climb a tree.
Climb a tree, absolutely. Now these seem like very avant-garde ways to train body weight, and you're absolutely right, because I'm not talking too much about the standardized traditional movements, although I'm a big fan of those. But if we think about the kettlebell training, you've got more traditionalized, standardized movements. And then with the bodyweight training, if you add in, again, movement from point A to point B, whether it's climbing or crawling or sprinting or what have you, it is going to maximize your overall control of your body as well as the strength that you can exert while you are doing it. So again, this is not to denigrate or overlook some other great bodyweight exercises like push-ups and squats and.
I see
things of that
the
nature.
students are talking to each other. No talking in class.
Yeah,
Please.
exactly.
Please, guys.
You guys have
be
to
respectful.
Raise your hands and refer to
Be
us
respectful.
as professor.
This is it.
Exactly. So to combine the two and get the absolute most out of all of them, that's what I would do. I would go with what Pat suggested, and then I would also go with working on the idea of moving from point A to point B with the bodyweight training. And the more you move in that direction, I think the more overall strength, mobility, and athletic benefits you're going to see overall.
Well, there you have it, folks. We're going to do some questions now, for a little bit. It is like literally 100 degrees in Wisconsin. I know that nobody's going to believe that, Wisconsin 100 degrees, but it is literally that hot here in Wisconsin. Nasty. So we'll hang out for a bit. Hit us with your questions about anything, and we'll sit and we'll jam for a while. Let us scroll up. Hey, Alyssa is here. How wonderful that is.
That's right. We got Erica. Hello.
What's up, Erica? Flynn Friday with Bonus Alex. Maybe we should make this a regular segment.
Down with that.
We did make it a regular segment, and then I moved out of Pennsylvania. So that was a funny thing. I said, Alex, move to Pennsylvania. We can hang out all the time. Oh, by the way, I'm moving to Wisconsin.
It was about a year and a half later, just to give a little credit. So I moved to Nebraska.
Okay, let's, all right, we're going to take some questions now. Sorry for the squinting faces. Try and scroll back up. All right, I'm not going to keep scrolling. We're just going to start here. Ian says, what do you guys think of maces?
I've never used them all that much, but I like the idea of getting some of the in-between strength that you don't get with kettlebell and bodyweight training, or you don't get it necessarily as easily, because the mace really has you moving your shoulder through its full range of motion. I think you get something like 300 degrees of rotational ability on the shoulder. And so if you're only training a few of those angles, you're going to leave a lot of rough spots. So I do like maces for that. I don't really know much about how to use them.
I don't really use them, so they mustn't be.
It can't be that great, you know.
It can't be. No, I think they're fine. Used to do a little bit of club work. I would say my shoulders, when I did, felt good. So I think maybe if you are trying to work some stuff out with your shoulders, are probably worth considering.
Got Bill here.
Bill, big boy Bill. Bill says, hey guys, I'm strength training high school basketball players, and due to the virus, we were forced outside onto pavement with virtually no equipment. Any suggestions for a strength workout? All right, so we just talking body weight on hot pavement right now? My
well, I'll tell you what, man.
gosh.
That is definitely a rough situation. But here's what I would say. Number one, you know, the number one thing that they need to be strong at, I in my opinion, in terms of their lower body, for example, is the ability to move and be strong on one leg at a time. Now, I have a student, he was in his like mid-40s, who liked to play basketball just purely, you know, recreationally, but he always had knee issues. And so one of the things he found was that kettlebell swings and squats really helped him a lot. And so I don't know if there's any way that you can borrow some kettlebells, or if you can do some makeshift type of thing. If it's makeshift, I wouldn't do a lot of swings necessarily, but deadlifts at the very least, and a wide variety of them, like, you know, standard deadlift, single leg, suitcase deadlift, loaded carries might be a good option as well. And again, I know you don't have a whole lot of equipment, but I think that you can get a lot done with bodyweight training, even if that's all you have available to you. But what I would really focus on, I think, would be some athletic movements that have their knees over their toes a bit. So for example, hack squats might be a good option, Hindu squats, hamstring curls.
Those are just squats for Sam.
Oh, right, exactly. Just squats. We're talking about the Hindu squat for Sam. And things of that nature. But I mean, in a case of not having any equipment, I think really beg, borrow, and steal, because you'll give them the best overall advantages if you're not limiting yourself to, you know, to only hot pavement.
Right, and for athletes, you know, in middle school and high school, you know, you can get a decent competitive advantage when they're well-conditioned and sufficiently strong. The better the athlete, the more specialized, you know, the less you're going to get in terms of competitive advantage from like a general strength program. Then it really becomes a matter of, how do I prevent injury? How do I fill specific gaps? Look, we've been strength coaches for a while, but strength coaches way, way, way overestimate the role they make and the difference of athletic performance at a very high level. At a very high level. They play an important role, but it's really about getting like maybe that like 1%, maybe. Now look, that might make all the difference at that level, so it's important. So yeah, I would just concur with Alex, but then also be looking for specific gaps for your athletes. Okay, where are they deficient? Where might they be prone to injury? And then make sure you're, you know, tailoring your programming to that as well. So good stuff. Jamie says, thanks for the explanation. I don't know what explanation that was, but I'm sure
we gave a good one.
I'm sure it was good. Christopher says, I need a forearm builder to prevent tennis elbow before I can become a big boy like Pat and Alex.
Well,
big boy.
you've come to the right place. What I would say for your forearms, first and foremost, is if you consider that most of the stuff that we do is closing the fist like this, you want to make sure that you've got some strength in opening up the fingers. And so some people will go kind of esoteric with the exercises, but realistically speaking, you can get by without a whole lot of equipment and build some pretty impressive Popeye-like forearms. Now, one thing I would say for sure is if you take I like using a sledgehammer and then making it easier or harder by how far you move on the handle, but simply doing wrist rotations is a very big help for strengthening the opposite side of the forearm. It also improves your wrist stability by quite a bit. My experience has been that the more stable your wrists are, the stronger your grip is going to be, because your wrist is often a weak point for a lot of people. I would also say that in terms of the tennis elbow thing, I mean, we're not professionals giving you professional advice in terms of rehab and PT and that sort of a thing. So we're just purely meatheads, giving you our meathead perspective. But also make sure that you are stretching out your forearms, because if your forearms get very tight, I mean, you're just going to have a rough time. So hanging can be helpful in terms of building the grip and your forearm strength overall. Actually, kettlebell complexes, particularly with lots of cleans, have a tendency to really buff up the forearms quite a bit. But it may make sense to take some other preventative measures too, like again, using the rotational movements. Like I said, you can also put your hand like this and simply open up against some resistance. You can use a thick rubber band to do the same thing. Very easy to do.
Look, I'm working out.
Look at this. Oh, this is totally an exercise that I have created. So that's what I would say. I would say start working on that sort of a thing, and probably make a focus on strengthening the opposite side of the forearm, and I think you will be all right.
Do you ever see those old face exercises that Jack LaLanne would do?
Yeah, that guy was a nut, but I loved it.
Indeed. All right, Sarah asks, hello, Sarah. Good to have you joining us, and she wants to know, did you or do you have a recommendation for a crawling book? I can think of a few.
What do you think? Should I
think our friend Tim Anderson is probably the guy to pay a visit to in that department, and anything coming out of Original Strength, I think, would be an awesome starting point.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I would look for the book Pressing Reset by Tim Anderson. I mean, he's got a lot of books out, and they all contain crawling as well as the other resets from the Original Strength system. You can go on Amazon, and they're very affordable, so highly recommend.
Eddie says, what rep counts are your favorite with body weight and kettlebell exercises in general? All right, I'll take this one first so you can be sure you get the right answer right away.
Of course.
And the answer is that depends. That's always the right cop-out answer. But it depends what you want to achieve, right? So if you want to really focus on increasing limit strength and power, generally heavier weight and lower reps is probably the way to go. If you want to focus on endurance and metabolic conditioning, then you're going to kind of move to the other end of that spectrum. You're going to have generally lighter weights and higher reps. And then for hypertrophy, you're going to be somewhere in between. So I don't like to put hard limits on it because it kind of always blurs over and there's always exceptions. But as a general way of thinking about it, for strength and power, somewhere between 1 to 5, 1 to 6 reps. For hypertrophy, somewhere between 6 to 12 reps, 6 to 15 reps. The lines kind of blur, but somewhere around there. And then for endurance, anything above that, right, is, I think, the right way to think about it. So my favorite would be just trying to pick the right rep range and intensity for the task I am trying to achieve. Anything to add to that, Alex?
This is an extension of the AgreeCast, so I have to say I agree.
Oh, yeah. Rob is here. What's up, Rob? Miss seeing you, Rob. Miss seeing you. He says, New Balance shoes just for grass cutting and grilling or okay for kettlebell complexes, asking for a friend. So, I don't know, man. If you try and do some kettlebell work in those sweet New Balance with the blue N, the quintessential dad shoes, you might be tried for heresy in the kettlebell world. Which to me means you just need to do it, my friend. You need to just do the perfect shoes for kettlebell training and let the trolls come in. In all seriousness, though, the New Balance shoes, as sleek and stylish as they are, they tend to be very cushiony. They tend to be very raised. When I'm in those things, I almost feel like I'm on a trampoline, to be honest. They're goofy. So perfect for cutting grass. You know, they're all that much better for the dad look if you get the little green stains on them. I'm finally just breaking my new ones in right now. But for kettlebell stuff, you want a firm rooting to the ground. So oftentimes I recommend less footwear if you can get it. So training barefoot, I don't know if you need to train barefoot. Some people really prefer to train barefoot. I've often done that just because for so long I've trained in martial arts gym and we're always barefoot anyways. But minimalist shoes, so what I got on right now, I got these $7 puppies from Walmart here. They're just flat, right? So these are good lifting shoes. Do people still wear those Vibrams? Does anybody here still wear the Vibrams? Remember the ones with like the separate? When do you wear those?
I wear them when I do hill sprints.
They smell so bad. I could never get.
I didn't say smell them, but I definitely use them at least for hill sprints.
New Balance Minimus I've been using for a while, and Innovates are different shoes that I've used and like to use for lifting. So the New Balance is just sheer style, not much for performance. Good question though, Rob. Really good stuff. All right, let's take one or two more here. Whatever you guys got for us. This is fun, so we'll have to do this more often.
My tennis elbow is legendary. All right, well, see a PT.
Yeah, so Christopher says, my tennis elbow is legendary. I almost want to start running again for something to do with my body, so I greatly appreciate this. Yes, happy to have offered some recommendations. Look, if you have an injury, don't listen to us idiots, right? We don't know what we're talking about. We get on here, we put ourselves on a camera, and we just make a bunch of stuff up.
There you have it.
All right, maybe that's selling us a little bit short. We know some things, but we are not physical therapists. So if you have a legit injury, if something is really in pain or hurting, you want to get that assessed, because with the body, everything is connected and everything matters. My friend Charlie Weingroff, who is an exceptional physical therapist, would always drill that point into my head. He's like, just because your elbow hurts doesn't mean you have an elbow problem. The reason your elbow hurts is because you might have a general body problem. And so, it's important to kind of treat locally, but we also want to assess and treat globally as well. So if you're in pain, if you're injured, make sure you seek out a good physical therapist, get yourself assessed, and follow the protocol. Do the rehab. It's tedious. But look, I used to have incredible medial elbow. I mean, so bad. It was from doing stupid one-arm chin-ups. Don't do those. And so bad, like I couldn't even done this without terrible pain. I couldn't even open up a kitchen cabinet. It was that bad. And what did I have to do? I had to get assessed. I had to fix it. I had to just not do a bunch of stuff that I really like to do. But there's opportunity in that, because then you can practice stuff that you've probably been putting off or you suck at. So I started doing a lot more lower body stuff. I started doing a lot more sprinting. So I improved in areas that I probably could have used to improve in anyways. So there's often always some opportunity when you are suffering from some type of setback or injury. So get it properly assessed and then look for those opportunities. And running's fine. Running is cool. Running is great. So definitely, if you feel like you want to start running, do it. That's great exercise. It really is. Deb says, I'm sorry, it's getting so bright.
Pressing reset.
For the hoops coach, what about using backpacks, double bags, loaded with anything available to provide various weights, then use for squats, lunges, cleans, presses? That is a brilliant suggestion. I think that you should take Deb's suggestion and use it if possible if you don't have kettlebells. Thank you, Deb.
And send her a check while you're at it.
And send her a nice big fat check. Okay. All right, guys. Well, we're going to cut it here. It's been real. It's been good, but with all of you,
hasn't been
real good.
Yeah.
But it's been good enough that maybe we'll do it again. Alex is out here. He's here for another week. So if you enjoyed this, if you want more discussions with the big boys, then please like this video. Please share it with both of your friends. Comment below. We'll do some more Q&A in the future. Right here on the one and only Pat Flynn Show. Videocast. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye. How do I turn this off?
I think it's
Help me, Alex.